When the pandemic started, I felt pretty lost. I felt as if my life had been canceled, and in some ways it was. My next project was going to be my senior formal dress. I had the fabric for it and everything, been designing it since fall, but then that was canceled too, and I still haven't found the heart to make it. Maybe I will someday. But all of my costume events have also been canceled for the foreseeable future for good reason. So there's really nothing I have to make, which is freeing and also confusing, I guess, because I can make whatever I want, but I don't know what to do. I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and I saw a portrait of Jane Eyre. The portrait was by Heather Slathholm, and she has a wonderful Instagram where she posts her artwork called Slathholm Folk, and she also has an Etsy. You can find the link on her Instagram. But I saw this picture of Jane Eyre, and I've always loved Jane Eyre, and that's when I decided that I was going to make an 1840s style dress. I found a pattern that I liked from Truly Victorian. The pattern number is TV454, titled 1854 German Day Dress. I've never made an 1840s style dress before. It is a new decade for me. If you watch some of my other sewing vlogs, then you know that I like to deviate from the original pattern with my own drafting of designs or combining pattern pieces. But this is a rare occurrence where I don't do any of that, because this is a new era for me and I didn't really feel comfortable changing anything. I'm making view A of this dress. The pattern says that this dress is suitable for the years 1840 to 1853, which includes the dates of the writing and publication of Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. The original publication date of the novel was 1847, and at this time, Charlotte Bronte's name did not appear as the author. Instead, she wrote under the pen name Courier Bell. In fact, all of the Bronte sisters originally wrote under masculine pen names, posing as the brothers Bell, rather than the Bronte sisters. They did this for many reasons, many of which are examined in the PBS historical drama To Walk Invisible, which I highly recommend. There's a quote from the period drama that really stuck with me, and I think it explains why women writers are encouraged to use masculine names, or just the first two letters of their names, even today. And that is, when a man writes something, it's what's written that's judged. And when a woman writes something, it's her that's judged. I'm not making the exact replica of any Jane Eyre movie costumes, but rather a dress that is inspired by them and Jane herself. When I think about Jane Eyre, I think of a demure lady of strong spirit. I think of her as plain, sensible, elegant, and well put together. Jane actually describes herself as poor, obscure, plain, and little. I don't think she gives herself enough credit. When I think of the colors that she would choose for a dress, I think of grays and blues, cool tones. I chose this fabric because I think Jane would have liked it. It's a little light blue with a little tinge of gray and a faint black stripe. I also chose this because I had enough of it in my basement to make this dress, because I can't go to the fabric store because they are closed. This pattern is titled the German Day Dress because it was drafted by Truly Victorian using a German tailor's guide that was written in 1843. Another thing I think is just kind of cool is one of the branches of my family tree stretches to Germany, and in the 1840s that branch of my family was still in Germany. They didn't come to America until they were fleeing the wars of German unification. So at this time in 1840, my ancestors, or at least some of my ancestors, were in Germany, so I think that's a fun connection there, where I feel that it connects me to this style and this pattern. The pattern notes in bold type that you should disregard any attempt at standardized sizing, and that it is strongly advisable to make a mock-up of the bodice before cutting out your fashion fabric to check the fit. Well, if you know me and watched any of my sewing vlogs, then you know I don't really do mock-ups. For me personally, I hate them. I don't want to spend my time doing them. So I don't. That being said, this pattern was very upfront about how it doesn't fit well, and then offers a whole guide on how to fix it in the pattern notes. I don't know why they just actually fix the pattern and don't make you do it, but that's a whole different problem. Yeah, so I had a lot of fidgeting to do with this bodice to make it fit right, and thankfully, because I flatlined everything, it was pretty easy to do to make it fit, because I'm stubborn and refuse to do a mock-up. But I was able to adjust it, and it worked out fine. I just, seamed ripped the front bodice seam a few times, and most of the time I was pulling it in, because I always cut things a little big, because it's way easier to take things in than let things out. But more on that later. I used a white cotton scrap of fabric for the lining, and I had to do some piecing to make sure I had enough to line the whole bodice, but piecing is period, and it's the lining, so no one but you lovely people who are watching this construction video will see it. The view A of this pattern has a gathered front of the bodice. Sometimes this is called a fan front bodice. There are 8 lines of gathering that I marked. I decided to hand sew these gathers with small running stitches, going under then over every thin black stripe, or the thin black stripes. I actually am starting to like hand sewing more and more now, which is weird because I used to not like it at all. But another reason I was hand sewing is because I felt like it would give this dress a more historically accurate look, even though my goal is not completely historically accurate construction, but rather a historically adequate look upon completion. I still decided to do this dress as a mixture of hand sewing and machine sewing. The sewing machine was just entering the public consciousness in the 1840s. But it technically was invented as far back as I could tell from my research, which I am putting more research links in the description box below if you are more interested in that, or you can Google it yourself too. But technically, it seems like the sewing machine was invented in the 1790s by Thomas Saint, who was a cabinet maker in London. And this invention was intended to be used on leather and canvas material, but he never really marketed this invention, and it's unclear if he even had a working model. Then, in the 1830s, a French tailor named Bartholomew Tinamonier? I'm so sorry, I butcher French all the time. Anyway, he made and patented a sewing device that did a simple chain stitch, and he planned to mass produce uniforms for the French army. But on a morning in January 1831, about 200 tailors rioted, ransacked his factory, and destroyed 80 sewing machines, throwing the pieces out the window because they saw this machine as a threat to their livelihoods. Also in the early 1830s, an American named Walter Hunt came up with the backstitching sewing machine, but was afraid it would result in massive unemployment of seamstresses, so he decided not to patent it. And Hunt is, he's also the person who invented the safety pin, so that's a fun fact. So it really isn't until 1846, when Elias Howe patents the first sewing machine, that was deemed practical.
Could you get off of that now, please? Thank you. It was very cute.
Howe's machine could produce 250 stitches per minute. It was able to outsew 5 humans at the demonstration in 1845. But these machines were not accessible to the general public at first. The sewing machine was very expensive. It had a price tag of $300, and that's about $8,000 in today's money. Yikes! Howe's patented device, he patented the device in 1846. But then his American workshop burned down, he got swindled out of British royalties, and he returned to Boston penniless. But sewing machines were actually gaining popularity during this time thanks to Isaac Singer's better marketing and improved design. In the Singer sewing machine, the needle went up and down rather than sideways, and it was powered with a foot treadle instead of a hand crank. Even though some Singers have a hand crank, because I have an antique one that's like that. But that's neither here nor there. Howe was furious about Singer's design. He mortgaged his father's farm to raise the funds to sue Singer and others for patent infringement, and he actually won a very nice judgment in 1854. The sewing machine, like most new inventions, start out in the hands of the wealthy, and then they make their way down to the lower classes of society as they become more affordable. So while it's possible to have a machine sewn dress in the 1840s, it may not be probable depending on the person's social and economic status. Here you see me doing what is called flatlining. So flatlining is simply the process of cutting your pattern from an underlining or support fabric and then mounting or attaching your fashion fabric. The double layer is then treated as one piece going forward to the construction, and it's a vital part of sewing a Victorian bodice. After flatlining, I stitched the gathers down to the supportive lining fabric so that the gathers did not move. I did small stitches between each fold. It was very important to me to do this hand stitching, even though it took forever, because if I were to just machine sew the gathers in place, it would crush them, and by hand stitching them, I was able to let them breathe and stand up fully. It was a lot of work, but I think the outcome is worth it. It was then time to attach each flatlined bodice piece to each other and sew them together. The sleeves are narrow and 2 pieces in design with a lining that is also 2 pieces. And then it also has a cap at the top of the sleeve, which I decided to have. I did not flatline the sleeves. Instead, I sewed the fabric, the fashion fabric together with then I sewed the lining together, and then I sewed both of them together. For the little cap, I decided to line it with fashion fabric rather than the white fabric, just because I thought you might be able to see it, and I had enough fashion fabric. the armhole is piped. So I cut some strips of fabric out of the scraps of the fashion fabric, and then I sewed it around the piping with a zipper foot. The front of the bodice is boned. The waistband on this dress is also piped, so here I am creating and installing that piping. And that completes part 1 of the making of the 1840s Jane Eyre style dress. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to hit subscribe so that you can see part 2 when I cartridge pleat the skirt and give the dress all of those magical finishing touches. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments. I like to read your comments.